All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen here, and we will see what kind of damage we can do. Okay, does everybody see my screen? Right on. So I'm just going to be working with MIDI today. I'm not going to be using samples or anything like that. Uh, Pure kind of like techno form. We're just going to be using synthesis, stuff like that. So I'm going to get rid of these two audio tracks, and we'll just start off, um, working in MIDI. And every producer kind of has different approaches when it comes to where they like to start with the track. Some people have to do a chord progression first. A lot of people like to start with bass or drums. I'm kind of like a bass and drums kind of guy. So let's just go ahead and start off with the bass line, and then we'll build it from there. Let me shrink zoom down here so I'm not totally using up all my screen real estate. Okay, so like I said, we're kind of keeping it simple. I'm going to start off with just a 16-step sequencer. There are some decent options for that. The particular one that I'm going to be using comes from the Max for Live Essentials pack. So if you have Max for Live Essentials under Max MIDI effect, you've got this mono sequencer. All right. So this is what I'm going to be using for my bass line. So let me full screen. There we go. All right, so the mono sequencer, those of you who've seen step sequencers before, this should be a fairly familiar kind of layout. Like I said, I want to keep my bass line and a lot of my layers very simple. So we're just going to start off by creating a very basic patch using the analog instrument, and we'll see how we can sequence it using this mono sequencer. So go to instruments here. I'm just going to grab a blank instance of analog, and we're going to start sequencing it. So right off the bat, this thing is just going to kind of go for it, right? I think I just created the ultimate bass line right there. My job is done. All right, so what do you notice though? Every time I hit play and stop, it's just kind of like picking up where it used to be, right? So one of the first things I want to do here, even though it's just one note at this point, is I want to switch my transport mode to synchronized. So now every time I stop and start, it's going to be starting at the 1. And now I just need to generate my bass line. So it doesn't sound very bassy right now. I do have pitch control on this main window of my sequencer, but I don't really want to pitch up and down within this octave. I want to actually get down a couple octaves. So I'm just going to go to this octave control right here, and we're just going to drop it to something that's a little more useful. Okay, so we'll turn that into something. So right now, I think I'm in a decent octave range. Let me go ahead and shape my synth a little bit here now. So first of all, I want sort of a hollow bass sound, so I'm going to switch over to square waves. Okay, and all I'm going to do to get this a little phasey is I'm going to slightly detune one of the oscillators. So what that's going to do, is things are going to slowly start moving out and back into phase. So it'll create a little bit of phasiness. And I'm not going to detune it radically. We're just talking like a little bit. Okay. Now I'm going to go to my envelope here, maybe make it a little punchier. And I can also do a few more things there as well. So there's this little duration control right here. So I can control the duration, or really the sustain time for any of these individual notes in the 16-step sequence. So I'm just going to shift that around a little bit. I want a very basic sequence, but I want it kind of shifting a little. Keep the listener's interest. So here we go. Okay, so keeping it simple. Right now, there's not a lot of fatness to it, though. I've just got my 2 oscillators. So let's see what we can do to juice this up a little bit. I'm going to start off by using filtering. I'll use the filter that's built in because it's got this nice little envelope generator for it. I want to hear a little bit of filter envelope action, so I'm just going to start dropping this filter frequency slightly. Okay, and then the other thing I'm going to do to fatten that up more is I'm going to put a filter through another filter. So we're going to double it up on the filters. The filter that's built into analog is a pretty clean, kind of digital sounding filter. So if I want to juice it up a little bit, what I'm going to need to do is add a little analog mojo. And I can do that really easily just in Audio Effects here by grabbing Auto Filter, which has wonderful filter models that I use all the time. So the auto filter is very slick. If you hit clean here and drop it down, you've got these 4 more filter models. Anybody who's taken a class from me before knows that I love these things. I'm going to stick with the MS-20 filter model here. And as soon as I click that, it's going to give me the ability to overdrive it. There's my drive knob right there. The other thing I want to do is get this filter moving a little bit. Auto filter does have an envelope follower built in, which is kind of cool. So we'll use that, and I'm going to overdrive it slightly and drop this frequency. And see what it sounds like even lower in octaves. Yeah, maybe too low. Breaking up a little. Okay, and then the next thing I can do here just to juice it up as a bass line is EQ it. We're going to EQ up the bass a little bit. Drop EQ8 in there. It's got the spectrum display built in. I can shelve it up or bell curve. Either one works pretty well. And now I need to choose what key I'm going to be in. It defaults to C. I think I'm going to drop this down to A. We'll just do A minor. So just drop it a few semitones. And the cool thing is, even if you don't know exactly where things are semitone-wise or whether or not it's in your scale, there is this option here where you can choose. I'm just going to choose A, Aeolian, A minor, and then if you hit conform to scale, if there was anything outside of the scale, it would actually snap it into the actual scale you're using. All right, so let's see what this sounds like. Okay, and now let's get a little bit more interest on that bass line. So I'm just going to take a couple of these, notch them up an octave. Okay, so now we're getting a decent pattern here. All right, so I have a few other options as far as getting things moving a little bit more for this bass line. One of the things here, actually, let me start saving here just in case we have a crash. That'd be great. Techno, oh, nope. There we go. Okay, all right, so I'm gonna grab another Max for Live device now. If I go back into my packs. I've also got this ARP right here, which is okay. Now, I don't actually want to arpeggiate this bass line, but if I set my time division to 16th notes, it should basically sound the same. And I'm already clipping. I'm going to turn down a little bit on my channel fader, and I'm going to just turn up on my mixer. All right, so this is a little bit different than the arpeggiator that's going to be built into Ableton. This Max for Live Essentials ARP has a few more bells and whistles. One of the things that's really nice about it is that you can actually do parameter sequencing using it. So if I go to this map mode right here, I can actually map this arpeggiator to any parameter I want to and then sequence that parameter using a 16-step sequencer. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to map that to my filter frequency. Okay, so now you'll notice that this is going to start jumping around. With my sequence. So I'm just going to start. Okay, so I've used a parameter sequencer, which is very different than an LFO. A lot of synths and sequencers have this kind of feature, and there are a lot of Max for Live parameter sequencers out there. I'm just using this one because it's kind of built in and it works fine. But what it's doing, yeah, it's jumping that around based on my sequence, just getting a little bit more movement and interest on that bass line, which again, it's just one note. All right, so now that we have this basic bass line, I'm going to create some drums on top of it, all right? Since we're doing techno, I'm just going to use a 909. We'll go to my drums, grab the 909 core kit. I'm going to drop that into my next available MIDI track. All right, so the real test of whether your bass line works is, of course, throwing the kick drum in there. So let's see what happens. I'm going to create a nice little 4/4 pattern here. And let's go ahead and get up into the 130 BPM territory. Okay. Okay, sounds all right, but we definitely want to juice up that kick drum, right? So there's a lot of different ways to do that. I'm going to use one of the tried and true here. So if I go to my kick drum, which is currently selected, I have a lot of options as far as effects I can apply to it. One thing I'm going to do right away, though, here is actually let me saturate it first, then you'll hear the difference. We're going to grab a saturator, and we're going to overdrive the kick a little bit. All right, here we go. And since I'm lazy, I'm going to put a limiter on my master fader.
Would you mind kind of giving a little brief overview of what the saturator is, what it's doing?
Oh, sure, yeah. So it's emulating, sort of overdriving the input stage of different types of equipment. So if you hit this drop down here, which, oh man, there we go. You have a lot of different emulations, and this is sort of a wave shaping distortion. I'm keeping it an analog clip, which is going to be similar to like overdriving, analog tape or something like that. So yeah, this is just going to give me some more overtones, a little bit more grit. Okay, so now. Y'all hear the difference there? When I switched from classic to one shot on my kick drum, it actually beefed up the low end a little bit more. Any ideas why that might be? Very strange. It's a great mystery to me. Well, classic is actually polyphonic, right? One shot is going to be more like one at a time, kind of. So I think with classic, what we're getting is just a little bit of overlap with the decay of the kick drum, which seems to be doing a little bit of phase cancellation on the low end of the kick. I'm actually getting more bass by switching it to one shot. So we're gonna stick with that. All right. Okay, seems to work pretty well. So I'm gonna add the next layer, and we're gonna do a clap. All right, nothing too crazy here. So we'll do a clap on the 5, and we'll do the 14. Now that clap is kind of weak sauce, so I'm going to overdrive it as well. Again, though, there's a lot more options out there when it comes to overdriving. You don't just have to use saturator. So what I'm going to do for the clap is I'm going to overdrive another one of those filter models. So we can grab those in auto filter. Pretty much filtering everything, you can't go wrong, you know. It's just like a nice little way to add a little resonant peak to sounds, sweeten them up, overdrive them. We'll go back to that MS-20 filter. Before, lame, weak, after. There we go, right? That's what I'm talking about. So we got the clap sounding pretty good, but I want to take this clap into techno territory here. So I want to add just some weirdness to it. So rather than trying to do some kind of crazy effects chain to my clap to sweeten it up, I'm going to use a little bit of sidechain gating to get another sound underneath my clap. Like I said, I want to get into that, stay in that kind of weird techno territory. So we'll do some kind of strange vocal timbres, maybe some wavetable stuff. So what I'll do now is I'm going to create another MIDI track, and I'm going to put an instance of wavetable in there, and we'll just design kind of an interesting little droney sound. And then what we'll do is gate it so that it's only hitting when we hear the clap. So go to wavetable and drop it in there. And yeah, let's see what kind of sound I can make. Right now I'm in the basic shapes. Since I wanted more of a vocal timbre, I'm going to switch over to formant. We'll see what we can do here. So I'm going to just create a clip, and let's just try. Since I'm in A, we're going to do the note at A. So, of course, it's a formant synth. It sounds cool, kind of like it's talking if you actually move that wavetable position there. I don't want to do that manually or automate it, so obviously a good tactic would be to just add an LFO to it. So I'm going to expand my wavetable right here, and if I click my wavetable position right here, it's going to show up on my modulation matrix, and I'm just going to add LFO1 to it. A little bit too wide. I'm going to drop that amount. We're going to slow down the LFO. One thing you might notice though is the LFO is re-triggering every time that note hits. I want it to be free floating, so I'm going to turn off re-triggering right here. And let's get that even more interesting by adding our second oscillator. Let's switch that over to formant. This time, slightly different vowel sounds. See what these sound like blended. Kind of cool, especially over a wider range. So when I added the LFO to this one, I'm going to have to use a different LFO. We're going to use LFO2. Get that moving. Turn off the re-triggering, slow it down. I want them to be moving at different speeds so that they kind of shift in and out a little. It's a little bit more unpredictable that way. And then, of course, we have a unison option here on Wavetable. Let's kind of weird here. No, it actually sounds kind of cool droning like that, but again, what I'm trying to do here is sweeten my clap with it. So let's add the gate and let's sidechain it so that it's only activating when the clap hits. Okay, so I've got my gate. I'm going to open up the sidechain. We're going to turn that on. Audio will be input from my drums, most specifically my clap, which is actually hidden behind my zoom window, but that's clap post effects, right? Okay, yep, there we go. Okay, so now let's just tune this gate.
Where did you turn the retrigger off? I'm sorry.
Oh,
on the clip itself?
Yeah, it's in the Lfos right there, that little R.
Got you, thank you.
Yep. Okay, so let's go ahead and see if we can sweeten this clap up. I can see it's already activating a little bit, but we want to hear more of that, right? So let's increase that release. Now it just sounds like this weird kind of vocal metallic timbre that's part of the clap. I think that works pretty well. Okay, so just to add a little bit more texture on top of that, I want to have a little bit of granularity to it, because those little subtle kind of noise sounds in the background can be a little sort of secret fairy dust you can sprinkle on a track. You know, if you just have some kind of noise or texture going, it captivates the listener's interest even more. So what I'll do to create graininess on this particular layer is I'm going to use the grain delay. It's got some decent little presets here. I'm just going to grab the grains preset, drop that in there. Now, as it is, this is just not going to sound good. We're going to have to tune it a little. It sounds kind of cool, but I've lost all the vocal timbre, right? So I'm just going to go to my dry wet balance here and let's just drop it down until it's usable. Drop the feedback a little. Okay, so now it's kind of like a little subtle tail on that. Maybe a little bit too subtle, so all I need to do now just to bring this whole thing out and hear more of the actual decay is compress it. I'm going to reduce the dynamic range of this track. So I'll grab compressor. And here we go. Gain reduction, and because this compressor has automatic makeup gain, which is currently activated, it's bringing everything up as I bring that threshold down, so saves me a step. Okay, so I've got that clap working pretty well. Let me just add a few hats to my drums. Nothing too crazy here. I'm just gonna get some closed hi-hats on the 8th notes and maybe open hi-hat somewhere around here. Maybe right around there. Let's fold this so we can see it all. And just to sweeten up all of the drums together now, you got it. May as well use it. Drum bus. It's the instant drum betterizer. Here we go. Even without tweaking anything, it should sound better. There we go. Yeah. Just a little overdrive. Now, if I was lacking that sub bass on my kick, I would definitely use this boom control to create it, and I could even tune it down to the A. But I'm pretty happy with the sub bass that's just existing right now. So all I'm going to do is just overdrive a little bit with drum bus just to add a little bit more grit to my drums. Okay. So now we have this nice basic techno pattern going. So all I want to do now is create kind of a B section to it. Maybe drop it down a couple semitones or something like that. You'll notice here that I don't actually have any clips, though, in my bass track that currently contains my step sequencer, because the step sequencer is the thing that's triggering the MIDI rather than a MIDI clip. But I can actually use dummy clips, actually just putting blank MIDI clips in there to control different aspects of this particular sound. So I'm going to create a couple dummy clips right here. And then we'll go over, and I think what I want to map is just, this has a global transpose control right here, which is pretty slick. So we're going to use that. So if you go to your clip properties and open your clip envelopes, you have a lot of different options in your drop downs. And I'm going to choose my mono sequencer as the device, and then what did I say? I want to transpose, right? So on this particular one, we're going to transpose down a couple of semitones. Let's just drop it 3. Okay, so that's working pretty well. However, since there is a tonal characteristic to that weird sound I added under my clap, I'm going to want to tune that down 3 semitones for this B section as well. So I'm just going to grab this, copy it, and unfold this, and we'll drop it down. 2, 3. Okay, so let's trigger these. So I'll copy my drums as well. Okay, so we're not doing anything crazy melodically. I'm just kind of like transposing a single note, and we're already getting places. Yes?
How are you switching all 3 at the same time?
Oh, just by launching the scene over on the right, rather than individual clips. So this scene 1 here is the A section, then scene 2 would be the B section. So just jumping back and forth that way.
Thanks, man.
Mm-hmm.
I had your video over the
Yeah, sometimes you have to move it around to actually see what's going on. All right, cool. So I've got an A section, I've got a B section, we've got a bass line, we've got drums. Since this wavetable is kind of part of my drums, I'm going to just group it. Highlight these 2 tracks. I'll just call the group drums. There we go. And then this particular track right here is a bass. Okay, so we're getting there, right? We've got, you know, some bass, we got some drums. Now it's time to add some other layers. So what you add is kind of up to you at this point. I'm thinking maybe something a little atmospheric. We'll get some kind of melodic component in there. And I'm gonna try to go for more of like a pad type sound for this particular. All right. So I'm gonna create a new MIDI track. Here will be my pad, and rather than designing stuff from scratch, since we have limited time, I'm just going to use a preset, but I'm going to build my own custom instrument rack to combine two different pad sounds. So I'm going to go to instruments here. We'll start off with an operator pad. Let's see. Okay, so that's kind of thin and piercing, which might work. I'll try to combine it with something a little more atmospheric. All right, so I've got notch phaser right here. Now, in order to combine it with another preset or another instrument, I'm gonna have to turn it into an instrument rack. So that's Control G on the PC, Command G on the Mac. We've racked it up, and now I can view my chain list, my chain selector. So I've got my notch phaser right here, and now I'm just going to find another sound, another pad sound to combine it with. So we'll get out of operator. Let's see what Wavetable has to offer us. Soul Sucker, that's pretty nice. Maybe subtle pad might be nice. I'm gonna drop that in there. And let's just hear what this sounds like. I've got my push, so I'm just gonna play some notes. Gonna go to scale, switch it over to my A minor. There we go. Okay, so those are blending pretty well, but I want to have a little bit of a different characteristic there. I want to have just some more evolution with my pad. So I want to start off kind of hearing the notch phaser and then have subtle pad come in. So what I'll do to subtle pad is I'm just going to slow down the attack on the envelope. And I can adjust the mix right here. Drop notch phaser a little. It seems kind of overpowering. So that's kind of a cool effect. I have just that real phasey kind of sound, and then that more vocal lush timbre slowly rises to meet it. And because I'm an A minor, I can pretty much figure out any kind of little melody here. I don't want to go crazy with it. I don't even think I'm going to do chords here. We'll just do a basic melody.
Could you go back to the Wavetable synth and just kind of reopen that view you were just in? Just to show off,
yeah,
show how you did that. Yeah, that little arrow.
Yeah, so you hit the little caret and it embiggens it, I believe is the scientific terminology. But yeah, so it gives you a lot of different options. All I was doing was manipulating the amplitude envelope just to slow down that attack. So it creeps in. All right. So I could try to record something in live, but since we have capture mode now with Live 10, I'm just going to use capture mode. It'll enable me to just play along in the background. If I stumble across something I like, I'll just hit capture and it'll drop the MIDI in there. So let's just jam a little bit. I'm going to start off with part A here, since that's A minor. Yeah, I think that probably works. So I hit capture, it dropped it in there, and now I just need to choose what I actually want here. I'm going to switch my grid to 1 bar of resolution, and looks like I accidentally tapped a note there. We'll get rid of that. Let's see what this sounds like. Okay, I can work with that. So I'm going to crop this now. Right click, crop clip, get rid of all that other fiddly stuff I was doing. And performance wise, I have a few issues here, right? I start off with this nice strong velocity, and then my fingers get weaker and weaker, and it's resulting in the pad kind of fading out a little bit. So I'm just going to even out my velocities to start off with. Easy way to do that is switch over to your pen tool. You can Control B or Command B to do that. It's a shortcut, and I'm just going to draw across my velocity lanes, and it'll just pop them up for me. There we go. The other thing I can do is quantize this. So Control A, select all, Control U, quantize. Real fast way to do that. Okay, I think that's working pretty well, but of course we have a B section here, so I'm going to copy my MIDI, I'll drop it down, and I'm just going to highlight all these guys, and remember we're 3 semitones down, so we'll do the F sharp, go, which isn't actually in the key of A minor, but you can switch keys. Okay, so let's try this out. Okay, I can work with that. Let's see how we doing on time. Oh, not bad. All right. So I've got my bass, I've got my drums, I've got my pad. We're definitely like in some nice techno territory here. I think what might work on top of this is maybe an arpeggio pattern or something like that. Maybe some more noise textures. Let's go ahead and build a little ARP. And I'm gonna do it a lazy way by stealing my pad MIDI. But let's figure out what ARP sound we want first. So we're gonna drop in another blank MIDI track, and maybe like a synthetic bell kind of sound or something might be cool. Let me look in Collision, see if we have something that works. Okay, I think I can work with that. We'll of course process it and make it weird, but let's just start off with this sound right here. So I'm gonna drop it in. Like I said before though, I'm just gonna steal MIDI from it, from my pad to control my ARP. So easy way to do that is I just open my IO section. Right here we have MIDI from, and let's just go to, where is it? Pad. Okay. And I'm gonna set my monitoring to in, or auto. Pretty hard to hear. Let me just compress it. Transpose when I trigger this next scene. See what happens. F# minor. All right, cool. So I'm going to start processing this in different ways. Like I said, I wanted to turn it into an ARP. It's not an ARP right now, so let me rename it. ARP. It's the first step. Okay. Okay, so we'll just build the chords ourselves. That's fine. And all I need to do now is make this sound a little bit more interesting. So there's a few different ways I can do that. It's got a whole bunch of options built into it just because it's an instrument rack, so I can start by tweaking these a little bit. And then I want some kind of rhythmic delay movement going with it, so we'll add that too. two parameters sounded pretty nice as I was manipulating them. So what I think I'll do is add some LFOs to both of those, get them moving a little bit. Since, like I said, we're keeping things pretty simple, it's a techno track, just go ahead and keep things morphing, even though the notes themselves aren't going crazy. So mallet force and mallet stiffness. So it's a physical modeling synthesizer, so it's going to give me some really cool timbral shifts by manipulating those. So let's see here. Let me shrink that down a little. I'm just going to grab an LFO. We'll use the LFO that comes with the Max for Live Essentials. My first alphabetized. There we go. So I'll drop one in there. And another one. So I'm going to map this first one to mallet force. Next one to mallet stiffness. And that's way too fast, right? So let's just drop these down. And depth, I'm going to shift a little bit as well. Okay, so now they're moving. Okay, so the Max or the Ableton delay is actually pretty okay, but it's nowhere near as nice as the echo effect, in my opinion, if you want more of that classic space echo kind of effect. So I'm going to remove that from my delay return. Instead, we're going to replace it with echo.
I had a quick question.
Yeah.
So with the sends, were those pre-mapped?
So I'm using the default Ableton set right now. So unless you've changed that, yeah, these two returns, A will be just the reverb and B will be an echo. So yeah, sends A and B in a default Ableton set will be A for reverb, B for echo.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm gonna unlink my left and my right channels here. Maybe we'll do some slightly different delay times. I'm going to switch this to 8th notes and the other ones to dotted 8th notes. Filter built into this, so much like an actual tape echo, you know, the sound of the tape, the grunginess, the filtering that happens from that is part of the magic of your echo tails. You can do that right in the interface here. So filtering your delays, filtering your echoes, super important. So I've got a high pass and a low pass, so I'm just going to kind of do a little bit of a band passy thing going here. If I want even more of a kind of aggressive filtered quality, because of the fact that I have my echo on an effects return rather than directly on the track, anything I apply to this particular chain here is just going to be applied to the echo tails and not the rest of it. So I'm just going to grunge up my echo even more using good old auto filter. what sounds kind of cool is that was sweeping around. Auto filter does have an LFO built into it, so let's just move it a little. So I had to do a little mixing to get that crazy clap timbre back up in the mix. All right, so now I've got a lot of different layers here. I could definitely use this to construct a full track if I wanted to. I'll just do a little bit more manipulation to these layers, then we'll just throw a quick and dirty little mastering chain on it. And then I can turn it over to some questions. So let's just go over to this wavetable. One thing that was kind of interesting to me is as I manipulated the dry wet on this grain delay, it created more or less of those crazy textures, which might be kind of cool. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an LFO to this one and just have the textures slowly build. But I want to do that in a rhythmic way. So I'm not going to be using sine waves this time. I want it to slowly ramp up over a period of a couple bars. So we'll grab LFO again. It doesn't actually matter where you put it. It can kind of map to anything. But like I said, we're going to choose a sawtooth wave. I want to ramp, so I'm going to have it ramping up. And as far as rate is concerned, right now we're in hertz. If I click frequency, I can switch that over to whole note synchronization. I could even set it to be like 4 bars. And then it's just going to slowly ramp up over that period. So let's map that to, what did I say, my dry wet, right? There we go. I'm gonna drop the phase. I want it to start all the way down, so I drop the phase down. So it just kind of creates a nice little ramping effect. I don't quite want it to be as extreme, so all I'm going to do here is just drop the depth on that a little bit. That way it's going to stay within like probably about a 20% to 80% range, something like that. We've got enough to start building our track. There's a lot of different ways I could do that. I mean, I could just start grabbing these individual sections, tabbing over to arrangement view and laying them out. But if you're kind of happy with how you have things here in session view, all you need to do is just hit the record button, record to arrangement, and it'll actually record it directly into arrangement view as you play your clips in session view, if that's sort of how you're comfortable working. More than one way to skin a cat. All right, so like I said, though, let's just get a basic little mastering chain on everything and see if we can get this nice and juicy. So my master right now, all that it has is a limiter. Let's just see how hard I'm hitting that. Pretty aggressively. I mean, you should never really mix into a limiter if you can avoid it, but you know, sometimes it happens. I'm gonna get all these guys and just drop them though. Shift click and then drop the individual tracks slightly, because I don't want to necessarily hit everything in my processing chain that hot before I hit the limiter. So this is just all about gain staging now. Okay, so I'm not really clipping anymore. I'm not even tapping my limiter.
Can you explain again how you did that, dropping all your track volumes simultaneously like that?
Yeah, it's pretty handy. You just click one and then you can shift click over to highlight a range.
Yeah.
And as long as multiple tracks are highlighted, as if you move any one individual volume fader. And the really cool thing about it is actually logarithmic. So as it moves down, you can see they sort of smooth out towards the bottom and then grow a little bit more exponentially as you go up. So it maintains your relative levels really nicely. All right, master fader. Okay, so I want to just do a real basic chain, you know, just a mastering EQ, bus compressor, limiter, nothing crazy. We'll start off with EQ 8, which actually you can use as a mastering EQ. It's got a lot of cool features. So right now we're just using it in normal EQ mode. I'm going to switch that over to mid-side. So once I'm in mid-side mode, I can on edit click M or S, depending on whether I'm more of a sadist or masochist. So I'm going to start over here with mids, and if I click this headphone icon here and start tapping around with these different bands, I'm going to be able to preview what's actually going on. So mid-side means you can separately process things that are pan center versus things that are kind of out. So the things that are out there should be probably, since I'm not individually panning tracks a lot, probably like my reverb and my echo. Let's start off by listening to the mids though. Okay, switch over to my sides. Yeah, so it's reverb and textures and things like that, right? So start off with on my sides, I never really want any bass in the sides, so I'm just going to start off by high pass filtering my sides, and I'm just going to bring, where's my, actually this band right here, I'm going to switch it over to a high shelf. And we're just going to juice up all that high end in the sides. So that should really bring up the textures. Sweep around. Normally I wouldn't do an EQ this radical in the mastering process, but you know, it's on the side, so it's nothing crazy. We're just kind of increasing the overall ambience. So I'm juicing it way up there. Switch over to the mids. So the cool thing about this headphone preview mode is you can just kind of sweep through and find the exact frequency you want. Seems like there's a little bit of presence here. I'm going to boost that up. Maybe boost a little bass as well. We don't want it too crazy scooped sounding. So it just gives it a little bit extra there. All right, so now that I've EQ'd, we'll do some bus compression and get things nice and loud again. So bus compression, of course, the best option in Ableton Live, gonna have to be glue. Throw that guy on there. And I think what I'm kind of wanting to tame and glue in dynamically with the rest of my track would be the drums. Drums have fast transients, so I'm going to go with the fast attack and release. Low ratio. I'm not trying to, really aggressively compress here, just kind of glue. Looks like it's mostly reacting to the kick drum. So I'm going to turn on my sidechain EQ and just get that low frequency stuff out of consideration. Now it's only reacting to stuff above 300 hertz. And now I have a choice here. To get my final amount of gain, I can just gain my limiter, which is going to be clean digital gain, or I can actually do makeup gain right here on the glue compressor. This is a model of an SSL bus compressor. It's analog modeled. So if I actually use my gain on my compressor, I'll be able to get some saturation out of it, which I wouldn't out of the limiter. So for my final gain stage, I'm going to be using this guy. And as some of you probably know, when you're mastering, the unit of measurement you use is LUFS. So there's a free LUFS meter that I always use. We'll throw that on there. It's the U-Lean loudness meter. Live doesn't natively measure LUFS, which is a psychoacoustic loudness measurement. So I'm going to throw this on here. And we'll shoot for about, I want a nice loud techno track, maybe about -8. Hit it perfectly. Wait, no hands. Ah, look at that. Set it. Drop my makeup gain a little bit. Pretty close. So that's looking pretty good. And you notice on the loudness meter, every time you do make a gain adjustment, it's a good idea to just hit this X and clear it. You don't really need to pay attention to any of this other stuff. That's more for like broadcast mixing and everything. Just this little integrated right here is going to show you your overall track loudness. So I've got just a basic mastering chain on there now. Obviously, there's a lot more I could do in terms of mixing, like EQing every single track, sweetening it, all that. But I think things are sitting in the mix pretty well as is.
Hey, Adam.
Yes.
Could you talk a little bit about the like why you're targeting -8 generally, and like what would be good places depending on where you're going with your track?
Yeah, sure. So -8, I'm targeting just because that's like how things tend to be mastered, and a fun thing you can do is just grab this loudness meter and throw it on reference tracks. Just to see how different things are mastered. Now, the majority of people these days are streaming, which means it's going to be replay gained by Spotify or YouTube anyway, down to like -14 LUFS. But it's still a good idea. People are purchasing your tracks on a physical medium or downloading them or anything. That's where the loudness is going to matter. And actually, the modern sort of aesthetic is for a little bit more of a condensed kind of limited sound. So squashing it can actually give it that upfront sort of aggressive feel. So yeah, modern electronic music. There was a while there a couple years ago where it was just crazy, especially like in the EDM world. You would see stuff getting mastered to like -2, -1. The closer to 0 you are, the louder. And that's when tracks were just so painful and fatiguing to listen to for a while. That's what's nice about the fact that Spotify is replay gaining now, is that it doesn't matter how loud people master, it's getting turned down anyway, and then just all the flaws in hitting a limiter that hard become apparent. So these days the tendency is to back off a little bit more. Electronic music, -8 or so seems to be pretty common, -10. If I was doing like classical or something with a folk or something with a wide dynamic range, then yeah, go to -12, -14, something like that. But if you're going for a more aggressive or in-your-face sound, I think -8's a pretty good sweet spot. And I'm not a big fan of the Ableton Live limiter. It's not a true peak limiter. It's not very transparent. I would never personally master through it. So if you have like a third-party limiter plugin, you'd want to use that one instead. But it'll work in a pinch for sure.
Yeah, the limiter that you do recommend.
Yeah. So there's a few. FabFilter Pro L is really great. And the Isotope Maximizer is another really good one too. So you can't really go wrong with either of those two options. Okay, cool. Yeah, so this session right here, I'm going to go ahead and I'll upload it to Google Drive, and I'll give Kyle a download link if you guys just want to mess around with this session. Before I do that, though, remember, anytime you're collaborating or giving a session to anybody, be sure you remember to collect all and save, because they might not have the same samples or packs as you do. So now everything is self-contained in my project folder. So when I share this, everybody who has a Suite license should be able to open it and check it out. All right. Stop my share here. All right, cool. So yeah, just to reiterate what we went over, using the Max for Live sequencer to sequence a bass line, injecting a little bit of randomness. We did some parameter sequencing on the 16-step sequencer as well, weird sidechain gating techniques to juice up our clap. Just a whole bunch of little tricks. And as you noticed, yeah, everything was super simple, melodically, structurally, in terms of what actual notes were being played. But because I kind of dove into the sound design side of things and got more textures and movement going that way, it sort of maintains the listener's interest. All right, so any questions about anything I did there? Anything I moved too fast on, or you want me to explain again?
There was one point where you made, so like the first track, the bass track, was just generative. There was no MIDI clip. And then you went to another track, I think the wavetable track, and you got it to do the same thing. And then you said you set retrigger on it. And I asked a question about that earlier. I was kind of staring at my Ableton session for a second and not looking at yours. How did you make it just generate the tone continuously?
So I did that literally by inputting a MIDI note. Yeah, like a 1 bar long individual.
I see. So I did that, but even after I turned retrigger off, it continued to retrigger because there was like a note start at the beginning of that clip. Mm-hmm. And then when I made the clip when I made the note longer than the clip, it never triggered it. Right? Because there's no start. You know what I mean?
Right. That's interesting. I think maybe hitting stop and start a couple times and hitting that retrigger, it doesn't seem to always latch.
So I should be able to just create a note that goes the whole length of the clip. And if I turn off retrigger, it won't trigger again.
Yeah, you shouldn't see that envelope snapping again. It should just kind of keep moving, the LFO rather, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yep. Anything else? And again, I think, is this being recorded, Kyle?
Yes, it is being recorded. So it'll all be released to everyone.
Yeah. Why don't you edit out the part where probability ARP didn't work? That was terrible.
I'm
Trust me,
totally
it should have worked. Like, I've done that millions of times. I don't know what the hell's going on.
I'll be diving into that next week. Okay. So,
it's all good. Homework.
Right.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, I think that's about it. The recording and the downloadable materials, Kyle can email all that out. And yeah, thanks for coming, everybody. And like Kyle said, if you're interested in taking a production class, my Ableton class is coming up in about a week here. So go ahead and sign up.
Yep, and here's
payment plans.
Here's a link, dadageek. You can drop in there and check it out. Let us know if you have any questions on any of our classes. So yeah, thank you, Adam. That was awesome. Yeah, I was producing a banger over here on my end. I don't know about y'all, but yeah, yeah. So yeah, thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks Adam for all of that. And make sure to check out Nate. He's going to be doing his next workshop next weekend. So make sure to sign up for that. You can find it at dadageek.com. Sign up; it's free. Once again, get into some Max for Live. Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
Rock and roll.
Oh.
Thanks, everyone.